Hey everybody, hope everyone's doing well as always. Coming to you guys again for another book review, and I'm super excited because this one is one of my favorite books of all time. Today we have Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Like I said, one of my favorite books, one of the top selling personal finance books ever. Super popular, not only this one but the rest of the series. I've read maybe 5 or so of the Rich Dad Poor Dad books, so super into Robert Kiyosaki's work, and this book and the rest of them just put me on a path to where I am now, actually. So this book was why I started reading more and getting more into the financial literacy and financial education because of what this book taught me. So let's go into that a little bit. So this book, first, the premise of the book is Robert, he grew up with a rich dad and a poor dad. His biological father was his poor dad, and that's because he's considered the poor dad because he was teaching Robert the poor man's lessons, and so he was a bit more conventional. He was saying, go to school, get an advanced degree, climb the corporate ladder, retire. The lessons that we hear a bit too often in society. But also Robert had a rich dad, and that was his best friend's dad. And he had access to him because it was, like I said, it was his best friend's dad. And so his rich dad, not only was he rich, but the lessons he gave to Robert were very different than the ones that his poor dad, his actual father, gave him. And so the premise of this book is the contrasting lessons within the mentorship that he got growing up. So he was obviously listening, he was around both men, but this book does a good job of explaining how different their lessons and their expectations for Robert were growing up. And he walks us through those lessons. He talks to us. He describes how they affected his personal and professional life, and literally an awesome book because the poor dad, his actual dad's, his lessons are conventional wisdom, or what society tells us to do, or it's the path that most travel. Basically, it's what most people do. And so, if you want to read this book and if you want to get the most value out of this book, go into it with an open mind because it will be contrary to conventional wisdom. It will be contrary to popular belief. You will. There are lessons in here that Robert's rich dad bestowed upon him, but also that Robert followed in his own life as an investor and as a business owner that go against the traditional societal norms. And so probably my favorite thing about this book is that it does challenge contrary or conventional wisdom, but also it goes into specifics about the importance of mentorship. So again, this book, like I said, the premise is the lessons from both fathers, the importance of mentorship and having access to those lessons, the importance of financial education. So not only is Robert a business owner and a writer, but he is one of the faces of, or one of the largest advocates for financial education in our schools. The book does a good job of describing spending patterns or cash flow patterns, and so how the rich spend their money or acquire assets, and then how the poor and middle class do so differently. Speaking of assets, the difference between an asset and liability and what we're told in society versus what actually makes financial sense. And then I think there are other great lessons, but one of the other big ones that I'm leaving out is that the rich have money work for them, but the poor and middle class learn how to work for money. So let me repeat that differently. So the poor and middle class, we learn how to earn money, how to work for money, but we do not learn in schools or through traditional channels. We don't learn how to have money work for us. And so Robert does a good job of highlighting that distinction and then also giving us some ways of how that is possible. Rich Dad Poor Dad, one of my favorite books. You will not regret reading this book. It is the one that literally set me on this path of continuous development, continuous learning, because I realized that within this small book there was so much information that would blow my mind and that schools never taught me. And so just acknowledging that there is information out there besides the ones in traditional channels, that pushed me to really dig for more information via books, via blogs like The Success Bug, and other outlets. So Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, you will not regret this choice. If you aspire to be an investor or an entrepreneur, or just someone with a bit more financial freedom, read this book. It will change your life. Thanks everybody.